Do you have a teenager in your life, or many teenagers in your life, who have absolutely phenomenal ambition, but it is not matched up by their behaviors, by their activity that they get involved in, which is also known as behaviors? In this episode of the Young Leaders Nexus, we are going to explore seven ways you can help them to realize their ambition. If a young child, say they're 12 or 13 years of age, they want to be the world's mixed martial art champion, UFC champion, or the next Cristiano Ronaldo, but they have nothing to do with that martial art or sport, of course they need a bit of reality check. However, there's ways of turning them down, and then there's other ways. As carers of growing young adults, we need to be very mindful not to destroy ambition for life. That's right, there are many people I've worked with who are adults now who are struggling in areas of their life because somebody shut them down, said their voice is horrible. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Said they were rubbish at football or sport, and so as a result they've never gone near that activity, whilst maybe later on in their life they realize that this is something that they're naturally good at. Here's an example. When I was approaching 16, up to that age, everybody used to say how difficult A-level maths was. In fact, they even said below 16 level, O levels at those times, GCSE level, was very hard. And you know what I did? I believed everything people said. And then many years later, when I actually started doing A-level maths as an evening class, I was shocked at how simple I found it. Doesn't mean I'm more clever or less clever. It's just that I was better at doing it than others. Here's how you start giving your young person a reality check. Let's look at the number one easiest thing you can do to help them shift. So if they've got a dream or hope, ambition to become a footballer, where are they hanging out after school and during break times? Is it in the football field? Is it at a leisure centre where they got a chance to play football? The first thing is, let's encourage or create the conditions in which this young person can practice the very thing that they'd like to practice. That's at the first level. But if by the time they're 13 or 14 and they're looking to get into professional football, it might be, for many, too late. So the other thing you can do is get them to join a local amateur football club, or if at all possible, take them to your nearest professional football club and let them hang out with the staff, hang out with the footballers they're allowed to. Create the conditions in which their environment changes, in which the people they surround themselves with reflect the profession they want to go to. So if it's in the case of martial arts, get them to go to martial arts class. Very simple. If it's somebody who's very much interested in becoming a programmer, a coder, then sure, it's very easy. Get them in front of computers, coding stuff. This is as the hobby. So you want to create the conditions in which they wish to become later on, do it right now. Of course, you've got to also get your young person to think critically. So if you want to be a football star, especially if the young person is neurodivergent, you got to ask them very basic questions. How often are you playing football? Who are you playing with? What are you good at? In other words, we are now looking at the skills levels. What skills do you have right now that will want a scout to come and headhunt you out for their club? What are you practicing right now that makes you different than others? And here's the thing, England hasn't won the World Cup since 1966, despite getting as far as it has. But then there's countries like Brazil, for example, where from the age of where they learn how to stand, they are practicing football. So is your young person at that level of practice or not? So what are their behaviors like? Now, instead of discouraging them, encourage them to practice football. Encourage them to learn skills, dribbling skills. Encourage them to watch videos and replicate whatever they're doing on the videos, playing the game of football. Very important. It's not about discouraging, it's getting them to think critically and make sure that their behavior is in alignment. The third level is all about skills. Now, the good news about most skills, they are transferable. So the next level is all about the skills. Skills aren't learnable, my friend. Sometimes you have to pay a teacher to teach them skills. Sometimes people will teach it freely. But the important thing is, can your young person learn the skills and will they put it into practice? So encourage them to learn and put things into practice. The next level is all about their beliefs, their values. People say they value this or they value that, but the reality check is this: if this is of value to you, then it becomes priority. So are you living it? Are you breathing it? Are you obsessing over it? I can relate to this because the one thing I valued very much growing up as a child is martial arts, Kung Fu in particular. Not only would I go training Kung Fu, I would sleep Kung Fu, I would eat Kung Fu, I would even go to the toilet thinking Kung Fu. 24 hours a day, I was obsessed with Kung Fu. Now, if it's a positive goal that you're striving towards, then it's a healthy obsession. On the other hand, if it's not obvious that they're valuing their football or any other activity, then ask them this question: what's most important about football to you? And get them to make a list, because the truth is, if they can make a list of 100 different reasons why it's important to them, and it's their selfish reasons, and that's absolutely perfectly fine, if they can make up that 100 reasons, or minimum 25, then yes, they've got a good chance. They might not make it as a professional, because a lot of professionals try and they fail. Only a few actually get to the top. Nonetheless, at least they're striving towards that. On the other hand, if they've only got 1 or 2 reasons, then encourage them to find more selfish, self-centered reasons why they choose football and why football should choose them. That's how you raise football or any other activity as a priority, as a higher value item for the young person. And by the way, you can do this for adults as well. Now, when it comes to values and beliefs, there's a different element. It's called limiting beliefs. What are limiting beliefs? Beliefs that you can't do something. So say, for example, your young person is very obsessed with football, but they're too afraid to go to the local football club or play five-a-side. It might be a good time to get a counselor or a therapist and help them to question their limiting belief as to why they shouldn't go, and get them to understand why it's so good for them to go. But it has to come from them. This is the purpose of your therapist, to help them to overcome that particular issue, or a very good life coach. The 5th level we are looking into is their identity. Once again, using football as an analogy, how do they identify themselves? Now, if they're really obsessed, they might say, well, I'm number 10. I'm talking about my era, of course. Number 10 was Maradona. That's my football number. It's my favorite number. And Maradona's my star. I see myself as that particular person. I'm sorry for showing my age, but that's how it is. So they identify themselves not just as a footballer, but a footballer playing a particular role in a game. So it might be the striker. It might be the centre back. It might be a defender or the goalkeeper. How do they identify themselves in context of their football? And then the next level is the 6th level, which is all about their purpose. Here is the brilliant question you can ask them, which is, by becoming a football superstar or whatever it is that they want to become, how's that going to make a difference to the world? How would you like to make a difference in the world? How would you make things better? What would you do to change? Maybe you don't want to make a difference to the world. Maybe you want to make a difference to your family. How would that improve your family's life, your family's condition? How about your town, your city, your community, maybe even your country? This is all about purpose. And the 7th level, the most important level in my mind, is the development of resilience. You see, if your young person has an ambition up here and their reality is here, when they get this reality check, this is called disappointment, frustration, sadness, grief. So resilience is what they need. First, if they're serious about it, then the very first time they practice, they're not going to be that good. That's just human nature. What coping mechanisms have you given them to help them become more resilient? How do they handle their disappointment? How do they discipline their disappointment? I remember when I was doing martial arts, first 18 months, I was the skinniest kid in the club full of adults. I used to get battered and bruised. Not because they were being horrible, because just through practicing. Luckily for me, I'm very resilient, so it was my anger that got me through, thinking one day I can make it. And very often I was led by positive emotions, but when I was hurt, I didn't cry and I didn't feel sorry for myself. All I thought was, one day I'm going to be a winner. And one day I did. I became British kickboxing champion. So resilience is the thing that will take them from one level to the other. In summary, you as a teacher or a parent can do a number of things to help your young person to reach their ambition. Number 1, create the environment, or get them into an environment in which they can practice their craft, their art, their dreams, their desires. That's very important as well. Within the environment, remove the obstacles and remove the barriers for them to practice that. Second thing is encourage their behaviors, their actions, their activities, their habits that reflect their dreams, their hopes, their aspirations. This means you putting your coaching hat on. If they haven't got the skill, the next level is to train them, either directly or through somebody else. Get them to learn the skills and practice the skills that will help them to succeed. Now, the thing is, with any kind of new behavior, if you want to turn it into habit, that means make it automatic. It takes at least 66 days of consecutive practice for it to become a habit. So get them a trainer and then coach them, or get somebody to coach them to practice that skill. If on the other hand they have a lot of self-doubt but they've still got their dreams, then get them a coach, a therapist, a mentor, a counselor, somebody who can help make that football a lot more realistic for them, or to remove the internal barriers, the limiting belief, the self-sabotage mechanism that's stopping them from being the best version of themselves. When it comes to helping them develop that particular self-identity, this is where you put your coaching hat on instead of your trainer and teacher. Ask them the kind of quality questions that will help them to identify themselves as the best version of themselves. Once upon a time, the #1 world kickboxing champion in my eyes was a gentleman by the name of Kevin Brewerton. I could see myself fighting in the arena alongside Kevin. I visualized myself with all the energy and the strength that he had, and I saw myself winning the championships like I did. Eventually, I dropped his identity and I made it mine. And this is exactly what happens to all people in sports, professions, or arts. This is the very thing that they become. This happens for everybody in the world of excellence. You take somebody who's a role model, you start following them, and eventually you become your own role model. With your mentoring hat on, get them to understand that their ambition and dream can make a difference to the world, but it's up to them to take charge. You see, when they know their why, all the other elements, 1 through to 5, is much more easier and much more of a walk in the park than leaving the why behind. Make sure they are fully aware of exactly why they choose this particular ambition that they have. And finally, when it comes to resilience, it's important that they fall over and they fail and they have their coping mechanisms to deal with it incrementally. You see, my friend, if you look at the world today, we have huge numbers of entrepreneurs, for example, 30% approximately at least, who have ADHD. Some of the greatest geniuses in the world have got autism. So none of these things should actually be a reason to be stopped from living your ambition. There are people who come from poverty, including for myself, who have actually excelled. People who are immigrants, like Steve Jobs is the child of an immigrant from Syria. So there's a lot of people in the world who've come from very disadvantaged backgrounds or challenging backgrounds who have thrived. Us as educators is to be there on those 7 different levels that I shared with you. Hope this video has been useful. Speak to you next time. Bye for now.